You're listening to Big Table, a podcast about books and conversation presented by Hat and Beard Press, Dub Lab, and Gold Diggers in Los Angeles. I'm your host, JC Gabel. For each episode, we speak to one author about a singular book in a long-form interview. Each interview is then followed by a brief reading, sometimes from the same book being discussed, sometimes by a like-minded title and a different author. But every episode does retain a loose theme throughout, and is inspired by the work of radio host and oral historian Studs Terkel. Thanks for listening. Musician Warren Ellis' first book, Nina Simone's Gum, published by Faber Faber, is a magical journey, mixing memoir, cultural history, reportage, and travelogue. The memorable title itself comes from a concert series that his regular collaborator, Nick Cave, curated in 1999, the Meltdown Festival, which featured a rare performance by Nina Simone herself. After the set, Ellis rushed the stage, not for the coveted set list, but instead a piece of Simone's chewing gum that she had discarded atop her piano, which he then preserved in a rolled-up hand towel. Ellis's chewy memento then lived in a crumpled Tower Records bag for the next 20 years. 2 decades later, when Cave curated an exhibition at the Royal Danish Library in Copenhagen entitled Stranger Than Kindness, Ellis included Nina Simone's gum as a piece of sculpture cast in silver. Cave calls it a religious artifact. Ellis brings you along for the ride as the gum is preserved for posterity, but the book is also a meditation on life, musicianship, the importance of bestowing meaning in objects and experiences. The book is also a tome to friendship, the artistic process, and human connectivity. To mix things up, our man in London, Dermot McPartlin, takes over interviewing duties this episode. Here's Dermot's conversation with Warren Ellis discussing his book, Nina Simone's Gum.
I love the fact that there's some kind of similarities in our story, because I came to London in exactly the same time as you.
Right.
In 88, 89, I came from the west of Ireland.
Okay.
Did you find yourself as much of an outsider as I did when I came to London in 88, 89?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did. I mean, I think when you go anywhere, you find yourself an outsider. But, I'd arrived in the winter, in 88, winters, they were really winters then,
Yeah.
And I'd never experienced anything like that. And I'd come from an Australian summer, and, I had absolutely no idea it was even winter in England, like at that time. I mean, my kind of, I just hadn't even thought about anything like that. And also being in such a large city, and I had absolutely no resources or network. But, I arrived and, I just didn't even know where to stay. So I'd pick up a paper and find the cheapest thing I could find and arrive there. And it was a doss house, for itinerant people. And because it was like, I was expecting for £10 a week, but, I was really green. I suddenly found myself incredibly vulnerable and alone.
Totally, man. Me
and
too.
I was really depressed at the time, so the combination of all that stuff wasn't awesome.
So the book is really kind of hard to pin down. It's a real kind of hybrid, because I love the way you start with the clowns and the family, and that's a kind of magical realist bit with your brothers, and I'm captivated. That's really been in my imagination. And then I love the bit at the end, the kind of melancholy of Vienna with Beethoven. But a lot of it seems to me that you're very honest about, you're kind of struggling to write the thing and figure the thing out.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, the book is me trying to work out a way into the writing process, because initially for me, the book was just about the pictures and what I was seeing happening in front of me. And I never expected to be sitting talking to people about the writing in it, like it wasn't, and I think I mentioned this in the book actually, that when I was told the amount of words I needed to write, I thought it was like 10 pages and figured that, I mean, I had no idea really how much was involved with 20,000 words, which is what they suggested was the minimum.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a clue. Really, I thought that it was me just guiding everybody through the pictures, and they would get the same kind of emotional thing that I had with them. And I thought, and at first, my idea of it was that it was this, like it was all obvious from the pictures. And then when, and I had planned to write it on the Ghosteen tour after the shows or on the bus sort of thing. And I know now, knowing what I do at the end of the process, that there's no way I would have been able to do that. Like, it actually required me to hit a wall with it, reach out for help, and get advice from people and encouragement, and allow the story to kind of like get out there with people, allow me to get out an aspect of it that I thought it was, and then let other ideas come in. Even the way I ended up writing the first draft was very much me trying to work out how to do something with it. And initially when I contacted Dan, because he'd approached me about writing something a year before we started talking about this book.
Yeah.
He said, look, I've seen Dirty Three, and, like you can string a story together.
Oh, yeah,
and,
amazing.
You're funny and this. And that stuff for me was just like, I love the danger of the moment. I always just loved like launching off somewhere and it would work or it wouldn't work. But I really enjoyed that. But that seemed to me a really different thing to writing something down. And I'd never given it any mind at all. But, and I didn't really want to write a memoir either, because I just don't. I have no interest in that, and when I came, toward him again with this idea, I could see it was a sort of metaphor for the creative process, and I could see these things, that I didn't, I wasn't able to articulate, that I would see in the studio and feel in a really like physical way, like it, like it emotionally, and my gut would move in the studio. I was feeling this with this, and it just seemed so clear. And, in my head then it was a really unusual picture book about this little thing, that was really big in my head. And when I did sort of sit down, and Warren Ellis, who's the script writer, a friend of mine, a filmmaker, and Dan and Alexa, they kept pushing me to sort of, that I had to kind of look at why I cared about it myself. And Warren kept saying, this is about you. You don't realize it. And I'm like, it's not. It's about this gum. It's about this and all that. So I ended up, much against my kind of better instincts, writing this sort of strange, fragmented, I guess, memoir in a way. It was really following the kind of the lead of the bit of gum that I had and what it meant to me, and working out why I cared. And it was Warren who said, look, out of 2,000 people, you were the one that took it, remember?
Yeah.
And Nick had said to me at some point, I find it amazing that you took that you thought to take it.
Because normally you would go and take the set list.
Yeah, you probably would, but I didn't even look for that. I don't even think there was one,
Yeah. The other thing is, and I've read a lot of interviews you've done and so on, not a lot of people have picked up on the humor. And
no,
I think there's some great humor in it. I mean, you killed me when, you're at the airport and what they're looking for is under your watch strap. I love the bit where Matt Crosby goes back and does the line of Gak in the dressing room. There's some lovely moments in it which are really, really funny.
Well, I think actually when people heard I was writing a book and having seen my sort of rants during Dirty Three, they thought it was going to be this like hysterical, thing.
Comedy,
yeah, like a comic thing. And there was a point in there where when I was working on it, that like I could see there were elements of it, but I needed to get a bit more into it. Like I had to sort of find my tone for it, But again, I didn't want it to be this sort of book that trawled through the sort of darker aspects of my life. I wanted this book to be about the good stuff and the wonder of things and the awe of things. And I think given how last year had unfolded too, it made me even more adamant, because there was so much sort of rage going on and frustration and you know, panic and terror. You know, people were sort of scared, you know, about what was happening. So I kind of wanted to, I guess I just wanted to shut that all out and write about this, you know, just the sort of wonder and awe of it all, really, and the great things that people can do, you know.
And I think that also plays in really well with the fact that you've dedicated it to teachers. And you know, I have a girl, Warren, who's just gone into Camberwell School of Art, and she's going to read it now because it's a very encouraging book, you know, for somebody who's kind of setting off on a path.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because for me, I think the kind of the best compliment for the book is if kids read it and get something out of it, you know, or young people read it, because I like the fact that by the end of it, you know, people are picking up, you know, they don't know who Nina Simone is, but they love this story about some lunatic who's collected a piece of chewing gum. You know, I love that the story sort of started to invent itself, you know, and it started to kind of dictate its own narrative. And I really like that about it's why I included those observations in there, as well as the people who are in absolute awe and admiration of Nina Simone and the nothing around the gum, you know, that it's a holy relic. You know, I really love that about it. And it felt important to me to sort of put that in there. But I you know, like my one of my sons, his girlfriend read it, and she didn't even know what I do. And she didn't know anybody in the book, you know. She didn't know anybody in there. But she really enjoyed it for another reason. She got something out of it. You know, it wasn't about that. And I think for me, you know, like that's the kind of, you know, if there's an audience that finds it, you know, that young people that can read it and just and think, oh, fuck, I can do that, you know.
Exactly. But also, Warren, you know, there are ghosts who go through the book. I mean, obviously there's Nina's ghost and there's John Coltrane and Alice Coltrane, and you mentioned Ginsberg and Johnny Thunders and all these people. But I was really impressed by Mick Geyer. Yeah, and, you know, we all need people like him in our lives, you know.
I think a lot of us have people like that in our lives. I mean, they're the teachers I'm talking about, teachers who encourage you. You all remember, everybody remembers the teacher who just said, hey, that's really good what you're doing. You know, that's enough. Affirmation, you know, and I think the book is about that.
Is it true that you also had quotes from people that you admire?
The book was littered with quotes, you know, like I had them in almost every chapter, I think, you know, like, or every section. And I got to the end of the draft and we were ready to go and hit, you know, like finished. And then Dan said to me, look, you know, we need to get all this stuff cleared. And, you know, I had, you know, my shoemaker, I had like, you know, the guy that fixes my clothes. I had like
Pasolini,
I had Anais Nin, I had like Marcus Aurelius, I had a letter of Beethoven talking about what ideas are. And that was the one actually when Dan said to me, like, we've got to find out if this is a correct translation from German. Where did you get it? And I'm like, I copy and paste it off the internet. You know, I have no idea, you know. And I'd had trouble with some of the photos clearing them, and that was a really drawn out process. And even getting Lou Reed's quote, Metallica's management held that up for ages because they were part of the publishing and I wasn't even using the music. So I just didn't want to go through another kind of series of things that slowed it down. And I had one photo that I just couldn't get. It was too problematic. So Dan really incredibly just said to me, we're sitting there and he goes, I have an idea. Pick one you like and let's delete the rest. And I had them in there because I just thought if people aren't getting what I'm trying to say, they'll get this will pack a punch kind of thing. And the interesting thing was as soon as he hit delete, I could see the book for the first time. I saw what it was, and he goes, your words stand on their own, Warren, you know, and he goes like, it's time to take the training wheels off. And Dan was amazing. Like Dan, I was really lucky that I had Dan with this because you know, even after, you know, the 30 years I've had working in music in an area that I get some things, but it's still a big mystery to me, music. And that's what keeps me coming back to it, you know, that it feels like there's something new up ahead, or hopefully something will change with it. And going into this, I felt, you know, I guess I felt like the actor who picks up a guitar or something like that and says, here's my new record, you know. I was like, you know, I sort of felt like I was really out of my depths in a way with it. And there was, you know, various stages in it, I just thought to myself, look, it's so simple what I'm saying. Like, I've got to try and beef it up a bit. So I would try to kind of use bigger words, and it just felt flat all the time. Like, it just didn't sound like me, but also it felt like I was reaching too far, and it started sounding pretentious. And I know what I was writing about could get pretentious really quickly. I wanted this to, if it was going to talk to anybody, that it spoke to them on an emotional level. And the only way I could do that was by being really honest about it.
Yeah. I love the way it kind of jumps around in terms of the timeline. And then I also love the way that you put in, you know, text exchanges with Nick and emails. So it felt like a very millennial kind of tactics you were using as well. So it's a really great way of doing it.
I really wanted them there because for me, they spoke louder than just writing out the kind of text that was on there, because you instantly go into a different way of thinking when you see a text. It's a personal thing, you know, like and I think if I just typed out our correspondence, it was different. And for me, there was something like an idea happening, like the text with Anne when she says this is a holy relic, it's like a hair of Christ. You know, it took my breath away, that. Yes. And I wanted people to see that text. Yeah. You know, again, I think this incorporation of emails and texts and screenshots and conversations was, again, my way of trying to work out the narrative and work out my way in the process, you know. I guess it is. It's more like a sort of strange journal or something, you know. And
it's all the better for that, because I even though I've read it twice, Warren, I think it's the kind of book that I'm going to keep. You know, I've marked loads of pieces in it, so I can keep referring to it. It is like a journal. It's like something that you can keep going back to and get stuff from. I know that you obviously kept the gum, and then you kept moving it to secretive places, and you hid it in your studio and in your house and in different places. Once you did the book, and now that it's out there and everybody's part of the story, does it feel cathartic for you?
Yeah, it's a real relief, actually. Somebody asked me this at the launch. It was Jack, actually, Jack did the designs and stuff like that. And he goes, did I have any regret about it? You know, like, did I feel like I sort of betrayed it in some way? And I said, no, on the opposite, actually. I feel a sense of relief because it feels like it belongs to the world. Like, it feels like it's one of these things that, and that's, I think, you know, what separated it from other things that I had that were just personal little totems. I mean, all these things that we have that we like to hold on to, they trigger our memory, and our memory is what defines us, and they make us feel a certain way when we look. It's like you listen to a record you like when you were, 12 years old, and it brings back that same feeling, and we like that. It's like, oh, it gives me that energy again. But the gum was another thing, because it connected people to a thing greater than that, beyond being a personal little, beyond the sort of spoon collection that somebody may have collected all their life and then ends up for 50p in the thrift shop. What it meant to that person is gone with them.
And also, Warren, the postcard from Dave McComb is really beautiful, and given what happened to him as well. But it's a really lovely artifact, that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things. That's something, actually, I think I didn't explain that well, but that card basically kept me sober for like ever. It was, what I wanted to say about that was that it was just this thing that for me was really important. It's why I just kept transferring it, to every case that I had.
Yeah, I have it here. It's beautiful. And he kind of sent it to you in the hope that he would find you above the Portobello Cafe. It was like it was like a bit of a wing and a prayer whether it would actually get to you or not.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I weirdly, this is the true story. The day that I handed the draft in, and Dan goes, "Okay, that's it. We're done and dusted. That's it. You can't change anything beyond a couple of words when we get the sort of the next stage going on." That afternoon, I was cleaning out a cupboard, and I found an old suitcase. It was this Samsonite fake crocodile sort of skin, and it was from the 90s. It was like when I was on tour, all that period, and God knows what I must have worn in those days, because it was very small. Like I couldn't have had much more than a couple of changes of underwear and a few T-shirts or something. But within it was a whole lot of letters from Mick Geyer. Like I opened them up, and suddenly Mick was there. It was just like, "G'day, handsome. How are you?" Like this, I'm da-da-da-da-da, like this. He used to always write me long letters. A whole bunch of postcards from Dave, like one from the hospital bed where he's literally like 3 or 4 days after his operation. He's like, "Guess what's new?" And a big picture of a heart and things like that. I found the original ticket for the Nina Simone concert.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yeah. And I found a script from Oren Moverman that he gave me when I first met him to look at for his first film. And for me, like whatever you make of that, I just figured they were all saying, "Kid, it's time to let it rip." Like you've done the best you can. I mean, and that for me was like where I just thought, okay, it's done.
Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis, published by Faber Faber, is out now in hardcover. For the reading this episode, Warren Ellis reads from his first book, Nina Simone's Gum.
Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis. Chapter 1. When I was maybe 4 or 5, my older brother Stephen, who was 6 or 7, woke me up with his giggling. He was sitting on his bed in front of the window, bathed in light, peering through the crack between the roller blind and the frame. I could only see his outline, backlit by the light, like the shadow scissor cut out of a facial profile. There was a glowing white light illuminating the window facing the backyard, light bursting from the space between the roller blind and the window frame. "What is it?" I asked. "Come and look." I went and sat next to him on his bed. He pulled the roller blind away from the frame. The backyard was full of clowns. The sky was full of light, like a giant flashbulb that flashed forever. On the lawn was an egg-shaped caravan. It had been converted into a food cart, the window flap held up to make an awning. Inside were clowns making hamburgers. They had a griddle fashioned from corrugated iron to cook the mud patties on, and would place them between 2 large gum leaves, then pass them to the clowns gathered under the awning. There were clowns everywhere, smiling and contorting, doing somersaults, hiding behind trees, taking aim, throwing the hamburgers at each other, playing in the large eucalyptus trees near the bedroom window and the crimson bottle brushes that grew over the back wooden fence. Standing on the top branches of the yellow wattle trees, scaling trees like cats, hanging upside down with their legs curled around the branches, their clothes covered in mud stains and eucalyptus leaves. They made no noise. Our laughing woke our father in the other bedroom. He asked if everything was okay. "There's clowns in the backyard," I yelled.
My father replied, half asleep from his bedroom, "They will be gone in the morning. If they aren't, your mother will scare them away when she hangs the washing out on the clothesline." After some time, my brother and I got tired and fell asleep. We woke in the morning and looked out the window. They were gone. The caravan had vanished. The backyard never looked the same after that. Every night before bed, our father would stand in the doorway of our bedroom with his head bowed, bathed in the amber hallway light, and recite a prayer. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. God bless Mummy, Daddy, Stephen, Warren and Murray, all the little girls and boys, all the doctors, nuns, nurses and teachers. Please love us all, and guard us and guide us, forever and ever. Amen." I'd lie in bed wondering who the mysterious Gartus and Gaitus were. I believe the prayer was written by my father. When I started going to church, I wondered why the priest didn't recite all of the prayer my father had given to him. After prayer, I waited for dusk. Lying in bed, the twilight would come to life. These clear shapes gently moving, comforting spirits touching my face, transparent amber barley sugar cascading silently. I could see the dark. I was never afraid. One day these spirits went away. I've looked for them ever since, waiting for them to return.
To support Big Table, go to bigtablepodcast.org/bookshop. You can help us and independent bookstore culture at the same time. Big Table is produced and presented by Hat and Beard Press, Dub Lab, and Gold Diggers in Los Angeles, and is supported by Invisible Republic, a nonprofit arts organization based in Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. You can learn more about their community-based programs and publications at invisiblerepublic.org. Big Table would not exist in the audio world without the expert skill sets, friendship, and dedication of sound designer and editor Matea Bain and audio engineer Jacob Ross. Special thanks to Eric Gorman at Gold Diggers and Alejandro Ale Cohen at Dub Lab for early encouragement and engineering prowess. Thanks again for listening.